The
starting.
broadcast is now starting. All attendees are in listen-only mode.
Good morning, everyone. My name is Kimberly Samuelson, and I will be starting today's webinar. Today, we are driving into the newest Laserfiche capabilities that turn content management into intelligent automation. You will all see how the modern web client speeds up search and metadata work, how AI can summarize documents and answer questions across multiple files, and how workflows quietly route, rename, and file content so your team does less clicking and more doing. Slide, please. We will also show two capture paths. First, capture profiles for standardized forms in which you can define zones to autofill metadata and autofill documents. Second, smart fields for messy real-world content, like think about your invoices, where AI finds vendor names, dates, PO numbers, and totals wherever they appear. Then we will switch to Laserfiche forms to model approvals. You will see how tasks, email notifications, action history, and dashboards come together so approvers and process owners always know what is waiting, what was decided, and why. We will close with quick integration notes for linking out to your ERP and storing final records with full auditability. Slide, please. We'll leave time at the end for your questions during the live Q&A. If you'd like to ask a question, please use the chat function of your GoToWebinar panel. I will monitor the questions and ask them to Terrence in the end, and he will respond verbally. Now, allow me to introduce Terrence. I'm sure you all know him, but he is a support engineer with CPS with more than 20 years of experience in the Laserfiche ecosystem. Before joining CPS, he was part of the Geek Squad at Best Buy, where he honed his technical and customer service skills. Today, Terrence brings deep expertise in scanning, capture, and quick fields, along with a broad understanding of how Laserfiche solutions come together to support our clients. So let's get started. Terrence, are you ready?
Hey, good morning, everyone. Thank you, Kimberly, for the wonderful introduction. I'm excited to be here this morning to talk to you all about some really neat tools in Laserfiche Cloud. We want to use our time together really to not only describe these tools, but also see how they're used within the repository and how to interact with them, right? Sometimes the thing with tools is that when you're given a hammer, everything starts to look like a nail, or when you're given a wrench, everything starts to look like bolts or nuts, right? So today we'll talk through some of these tools and give you some examples of how they can be used, and maybe even take a quick peek under the hood to help you get your creative juices flowing, right? I'm going to jump right in and talk a little bit about what I think is one of the most valuable tools inside of Laserfiche. It's not like the new kid on the block or anything like that, but the keyword searching inside of the web client interface or the cloud interface is a really powerful tool in that it helps you find content and use the search efficiency that Laserfiche has provided to give you powerful search results, right? And with the new search efficiencies built into the Laserfiche Cloud, your search results come back a lot quicker than what they used to, right? And it also provides a means to add filters to help you narrow your results and refine your searches so that you're able to find what you're looking for when you want it and return those results a lot quicker, right? So let's say, for example, I can search for the term Laserfiche, and I can have the keyword search span all throughout all of the document text, fields, entry names, annotation text even. that is located in the repository. So go out and hit this search, let it go, and it'll go out and do its thing. So with the smaller repository here, we're not going to find a whole bunch of results, but the search efficiency has been greatly improved with the cloud interface. What's also new is the Smart Chat, right? So Smart Chat is an AI chatbot that helps answer questions about your documents, right? And this gives you a way to discover information and insights a lot quicker and more easily. And with the latest update to Smart Chat, now Smart Chat has expanded to not only answer questions about your documents, right, but also return and evaluate and cross-reference information from the Laserfiche Cloud educational resources, right? So I can type into the chatbot questions like, which of these documents describe how to configure a DMT, right? So it'll go out, it'll evaluate not only the contents that are displayed within the browser, but it'll also interact and find and reference documents that are inside of the Laserfiche Cloud educational resources. So here it tells us that, hey, this hosting Laserfiche forms in the perimeter network contains detailed information or instructions on how to configure forms in the DMZ, right? And so we can go and locate that document in our results and open it and review the document. And use the Smart Chat inside of the document view to ask it additional questions, right? So you can even ask it to summarize the document. And it'll go out and it'll evaluate the text and give you a brief summarization of the document in question. Now, Laserfiche AI has also given us the option to create summarizations inside of the documents using the summary tab in the document viewer, right? And so we can create a summary using Laserfiche AI by clicking on the Create Summary button here. And this will go out and it'll give us a brief summarization of the documents. So much like the Smart Chat, this will also create this summarization where you can copy the text and bring it to another external application. And this will save it and allow other folks to use that same summary for the documents. Now let's ask Smart Chat another question. Let's ask it, how do I configure mail merge in Laserfiche workflow? You'll see this question. We'll go out and it'll start to think about the question and also cross-reference any Laserfiche educational resources, right, to give us information on how to start developing workflow processes that'll do document merges or document mail merge and update documents within the repository and merge those metadata fields into PDF templates, right? So you can see here that the Smart Chat, the expanded use of not only just evaluating the documents, the contents in your repository, but also cross-referencing the Laserfiche Cloud educational resources will answer a lot more questions and expand that creative utility of the smart chat within Laserfiche Cloud. And you also notice that smart chat also works in a lot of different places, a lot more places than just the actual repository, right? Let's say, for example, we're looking at our new and improved web client interface, right? And you can see here that the web client interface, the field display or the metadata display or layout looks a lot different than what it used to, right? Where in the past, we can have a template with fields that are just listed in top-down order, right? Now with the new web interface or cloud interface, we can see that we can rearrange and update how these fields are displayed within the view, right? So we can now have fields, shorter fields that can list side by side together. We can also have not just field lists, but also fields that may have multiple values that are presented as checkboxes, and even have fields that can collect other values that may not be in the list fields. And we can also see here too that we can have fields that are hidden, right? So much like our forms canvas, we can have fields that are shown or hidden based on values that we select in other fields. So I've got a publish field here that is a yes or no radial type button. If I select yes, I can see that publishing details will now appear as options to fill out. We can even section fields off into collapsible sections so that the view is a little bit more streamlined and compact. And what this looks like from a design view, we can come over to our repository administration. Let's open that as a new tab here. And in our repository administration, we've got the option to review our templates. And if we take a look at our documentation template here, we've got a nice little preview, and we can have administrators modify templates using a canvas-like designer, where we can move fields around, change the layouts, add in different formatting options for the fields. And then we can also add in rules to help us control how fields are viewed or displayed depending on other values that are added to the fields. All right. There are a lot of new controls, ones related to text, numbers, drop downs, radio buttons, but they're all controllable through this view here. We also have the ability to tie template fields to external tables, right? So this downtown college template here, we've got fields that are tied to an external table for student IDs and student information, right? And these are called what are called dynamic fields. So that this template has been tied to an external table that we've attached to the cloud system, right? An external table called students. And each of these fields have been linked to that table in some fashion or some way. Now the student ID listing, even though it's a free-form type field, we can enter or select from an external table of student IDs, and that student ID will return data for the date of birth, the last name, first name, and other field data. All right, so let's take a look at what that looks like. In the repository, so we close the repository administration. Let's come over to our folders here. Right. So I'm going to go into our incoming folder here. Now, let me talk a little bit about the incoming folder before we bring in any documents here. Now, this incoming folder has been fashioned with a Laserfiche workflow, right? So workflow, as part of process automation, it's a silent automation tool that kind of works behind the scenes. Right? Workflow gives us the ability to create processes that utilize rules and conditions to perform actions within the repository. Some of these actions can include renaming documents or routing documents based on the document's own metadata, right? And so what we've done with this incoming folder here is we've fashioned it so that it'll monitor any activity, like when a document gets created or imported or brought in. It'll evaluate those conditions, like the document name, the metadata that we're selecting, and it'll use that metadata to rename and route that document accordingly, right? So I'm going to pull in a document from my sample files here. Let's just bring in document PDF into the incoming folder. So I've got a student form here, and I'm going to go over to my fields, and I'm going to select that this template is, or this document type is a document for Downtown College. It's a student file for Downtown College. And with the Downtown College template, we've fashioned the student ID, last name, first name as required fields. And so in the past, we would have to enter all of this data, this metadata information in kind of one by one. But since we've got this template defined as a dynamic template with dynamic fields, we can select the student ID from the listing here. I'll just select 15 as the listing, and we can see that the last name and the first name automatically get populated, as well as the date of birth, right? So that's how the dynamic fields are linked to the external table to be able to fill in some of this other metadata information without having to type it all in. Right? And so lastly, we'll just need to select the document type. I'll go and select the medical immunization record as my document type, and I'll say import. Now, since workflow has been designed to monitor this incoming folder for any Downtown College template type documents, we'll see that won't sit here for very long. We'll go and refresh the page here. And we'll see that workflow has gone and it's routed this medical immunization record document into an appropriate place inside of the repository. Now, if I navigate back up to the demo folder, we'll see we've got a new folder for Downtown College. We look inside of Downtown College, we've got a student files folder that workflow has created for us. And then inside that, it's routed the document using the student's name and ID and then within it, it's updated the name of the document to include what document type it was and the student's name. So let's see that again. If we come back over to our incoming folder, let's bring in another sample document. We'll do the same thing. We'll come over to our fields. We'll select our template. We'll select Downtown College here. And this time we're working with a different student ID. And let's make this their birth certificate. All right, so we're filling in all of the metadata information that we can, that's required, and using the dynamic fields to help us fill in some of the metadata information. Let's say import, and that'll get brought in and routed accordingly. Right. We'll go ahead and refresh our page, and off it goes. Now we go back over to our student files folder. We now have the M folder for used, and then there's our document there. We can also fashion workflow to not only monitor the incoming folder, but also monitor changes within the other structured documents, right? So let's say this document was filed improperly. We can actually update the metadata. And since these are dynamic fields, they're actively updating and actively looking to that external table. We can actually change our metadata. And since the dynamic field, it automatically updates that metadata. And hit save. And Laserfiche workflow detects that change because we've told it to pay attention for those types of changes. And we can refresh our page, and now it's no longer in the AMUsed student file folder. If we go back up to student files, we now have a new T folder for our I am tired. And inside this folder is our document. So that's one way to capture metadata information, is to use those dynamic fields to help us fill in metadata information that can be found in an external table or can be linked to a table. We can also use workflow with other capture processes or other capture tools that will help us fill in metadata information. Another great capture tool is what is called capture profiles inside of the process automation. Right? So capture profiles allow us to import sample files and identify based on locations of metadata to help us fill in and populate metadata information, right? And so we can do this by going over to our process automation. And we see here in process automation, we've got the ability to see workflows, business processes. But one thing I wanted to show was this capture profiles option here. Now, these capture profiles can be created and designed based on the document type. So in this case, we've got a job application. And with most job applications, for example, we've got fields or data that's going to always appear in the same places, right? And so we can create these capture boxes that will allow us to identify this location as a zone, right? We can give these zones names and then call on this capture profile inside of our workflow processes. So these capture profiles can be run from our workflows. Right, so we open up workflow just to see what that looks like here. So the workflow will be designed to run the capture profile for the job applications, collect all of that metadata information from those zones, and we're going to use that metadata that we're capturing from those zones to assign the appropriate field values and rename the document, and then move that entry into its final storage location or final folder location. So let's take a look at how that looks when we run the workflow, or when we create these job application documents, or bring these job application documents into the repository. I'm going to go back over to the repository. And let's go over to our incoming folder. Okay. Let me bring in one of these job application files here. One too many. There we go. I've got a job application that I'm bringing in, and I see that all of the fields are in the locations that I'm expecting, right? And so all I have to do is select the template that this is a job application. I can leave the rest of the information blank because I'm telling workflow to run the capture profile to get the first name and the last name and the email and the position. And so I can just hit import. You notice I didn't fill out any of that metadata information. I just told it that it's going to use the template for the job application. And then I can go ahead and just refresh the page, and then off it went. Right. So now workflow has detected that it's a job application. It's run the capture profile and evaluated those zones. And if I go back up to the demo folder, I see I've got a new folder for job applications. Let's go ahead and jump in there, and we've got a new folder for the position that we're hiring for. And then there's our application document. Right? And if we open it up, we see that capture profile, because we've defined that the name is located here, and the date and the email is located in those positions, it's gone and evaluated that data and placed it into the template field for us. So capture profiles is really powerful when we've got data that is going to appear in the same location each time, right? And so what that allows us to do is now we can bring in a bunch of documents all at once, bring over a handful of applications, and instead of having to fill out the template metadata for each one, I simply have to just say, these are all job applications. The data is going to be in the same position each time. So I'll just say import. And actually, let's apply these properties to all of these imported documents, just so that I don't have to do it one by one. And there we go. We've got these 5 job applications that are going to use the same template. And if we just quickly refresh, we'll see that workflow has already evaluated those documents, and in accordance to the workflow instructions that we've set, they're all going to be filed according to the position that they're applying for. And we're also updating the document names so that it's easy for us to identify, and it's uniform throughout the entire repository, that all of our job applications are going to be titled or named using the applicant name and the position that they're applying for, as well as the year that they've applied. And so that's all workflow is doing, is it's driving the structure and nomenclature based on that metadata that we collect. Right? So capture profiles is really good for that, right? If the document data is all in the same place and we know how to quickly identify it using those zones, we'll do that for those document types. Now this differs from, say, invoice type documents, right? Invoices can have data that appears a little bit all over the place, right? So we may have an invoice that looks a lot like this, where we've got the vendor name, we've got an invoice number, an invoice date, PO. Invoices can vary quite a bit, right? So we can't really rely on capture profiles to handle the capture of this data. And so what's really neat inside of Laserfiche Cloud now is what's called smart fields, right? And so we can actually configure these templates and fields to evaluate using just native language, evaluate the document pages to capture or to collect some of that field information, or collect the field information. Right, so let's see what that looks like. I'm going to bring in an invoice document to my incoming folder. Pick up an invoice here. Now, workflow will really be powerful in automating this, but let's take a look at how the smart fields works first before we have workflow do its thing. So I'm going to hit import without selecting any template here, just so that I can see this document inside of the repository. And so smart fields is really neat in that I can tell Laserfiche that this invoice document is going to have an invoice number, an invoice date, and a PO number somewhere on the document, a vendor name somewhere on the document, right? And so I can select the invoices template. Now this invoice template, since we've got fields that have been labeled as smart fields, we can use this extract values option here in the document view to go ahead and pull that data from the documents using smart fields, right? And so by extracting those values, we see that we've got the vendor pulled in, we've got the invoice date pulled in, we've got the invoice number pulled in. All of this relevant metadata that pertain to the invoice have been pulled in using smart fields to collect. And so I can go ahead and save those changes. Now, just like that, workflow has detected that this document has been updated with enough metadata information to go ahead and route it to the appropriate invoices location in the repository. I'm going to class my child applications here, and let's just refresh CPS demo. And now we've got an invoices template, or I'm sorry, an invoices folder. And inside that invoices folder, we've got another folder for the vendor and for the document itself. Right. So let's take a peek at how this invoices template has been configured in the backend, right? And so, like I mentioned, we're using just native language to grant it properties that will show how these fields are extracted using smart fields, right? So the vendor has been flagged for auto extraction, right? And we're giving it just a brief description of the company name or business on the top of the page. The more descriptive we are with the description, the more accurate the smart fields extraction is going to be, right? And so we can give it a simple description like invoice date, and it'll go out and it'll just find the invoice date, purchase order number or PO number. So the more descriptive you are, the more accurate that extraction is going to be. And here we're using just plain native language. We're not having to learn how to code or anything like that. We're just using native language to provide that description. Now, what's also new with the smart fields is that we have the ability to label certain templates eligible for automatic selection with smart fields. And so what this means is now we don't even necessarily need to assign a template to a document, right? With this option here, we can assign certain templates using native language, right, and make them eligible for automatic selection with smart fields, right? So I've got two different templates here, the invoices template and the job application template, right? I've made them both eligible for automatic selection, right? So now documents that have an invoice date and an invoice number, it's going to automatically select this invoices template. I don't have to do it at the time of import or at the time of scanning, right? Same for job applications here. Because I've flagged it as eligible for automatic selection with smart fields, I can see that any job or employment applications for hiring or work, if smart fields detects that that document is a job application, it's going to go ahead and automatically select that template for me. I don't have to specify that at the time of capture, right? And so what this allows us to do now is if I go back over to the repository, and what this looks like from the perspective of someone bringing these documents in, right, is in the incoming folder, I'm going to bring in kind of a mixture of documents, right? So I've got a mixture of applications and invoices, right, that I can use smart fields to evaluate without having to specify any other information to them. Right? So I've got these 15 documents. They vary in invoice or document type, invoice or job application. Right? Now for the template selection here, all I've got to do is I'll just have it Laserfiche automatically select the template for me. Right? And since I've labeled those two document types inside of my template configuration, I can go ahead and apply these properties to all imported files. Just have Laserfiche smart fields evaluate the documents and select the template for me. And then I'll have workflow do the rest of the filing and metadata updating for me. So I'll just hit import. And off it goes, bringing each of those 15 files into the repository and evaluating them in accordance to the metadata. All right, so just like that, workflow has already started to do its thing. You can see here that some of them have the template already assigned. If you look through, we've got all of our documents have been appropriately assigned the appropriate template. If we look over in our invoices, we've got some documents that are over 1,000, under 1,000. We can see that we didn't need to select any template for them. The metadata has been extracted already, and for invoices, because they vary, right, we're using the smart fields to evaluate the field types and draw in and pull in that metadata information, right? Whereas our job applications, we're using capture profiles to determine that metadata information. Okay. For the next part of our presentation, we'll talk a little bit about forms. Now, before we segue through, were there any questions or comments or maybe things that we wanted to revisit?
Hi. Yeah, there are.
Here on the topic.
So this one is kind of a two-part question, so we'll take it apart at a time. This goes back to training AI. We all know that AI needs to be either, prompted correctly or trained to be able to work efficiently and correctly. So how is that handled for Laserfiche? So are you using similar documents that you would use in a process to train the AI? How does that happen?
Right, so the large language model that the Laserfiche Smart Chat uses, it's linking to a lot of different resources that primarily can be found in both the Laserfiche documentation, but also the cloud training resources on the Laserfiche website, right? So it's including documents and resources from the Aspire site, where there are learning portals that you can learn from, but also the Laserfiche documentation that's native to the application.
Okay. Um, what about the accuracy on the document summary functionality? How accurate is that you've seen?
It's pretty accurate, actually. It's very comprehensive, while at the same time it's pretty accurate, I would say. If we were to look at a sampling of how the summarization appears for, say, training documentation, right? let's pick one of these documents here. Just getting started with Laserfiche. This is a 51-page document, right? We can create the summary of the document, and it evaluates those 51 pages and gives you a really accurate, brief description of and structure of how the document has been laid out.
Okay, so I know that AI, so if you're optimizing, say, a website for AI, there's ways to create the pages to make it easier for AI to read. Do you think it's safe to make the assumption that what Laserfiche has done with their documentation is create it in that similar fashion so it's easier for the AI to read and summarize more comprehensively?
I would say yes,
Okay,
because it's using your actual documents.
right. Can Smart Chat look across multiple documents at once?
That's a great question. Yes, matter of fact, it can, right? So it is limited in the sense of it will only evaluate, I think right now, up to 20 documents,
Okay.
whether they're from the search results. But you don't have to necessarily select them all, right? But you can. But Smart Chat will allow you to answer questions about the documents that appear from either the browser view or your search results, right? And so you can ask it questions like what types of documents these are,
Mm-hmm.
and it's gonna answer questions about these documents in your repository.
Okay. Regarding the summaries, is there a way we can control who sees them?
That's a great question. I don't think that there's a way to control it at this point, but it may be something that will be available in the future.
Okay. Um, does AI work on scanned images after OCR or only on born digital? I guess that would be both, right?
That's correct. So it would be both. So scanned documents will qualify for, um, the AI capture profile once they land in the repository, obviously.
Okay. So question about workflow. Can workflow watch an incoming folder and file documents automatically? So that's batch processing, right?
This would be batch processing. So Laserfiche Cloud does have a method. It wouldn't be workflow that does the importing.
Is it import
It
agent
would
then?
be import
Yeah.
agent, right? So
Okay.
import agent will allow you to create those profiles that'll monitor network locations or places that are outside of the repository, and help bring those documents in. Now, once those documents get in, that's when the workflow would take over and do the processing.
When would it be best to use capture profiles instead of smart fields?
That's a great question, right? So capture profiles really works well when we can identify uniformly where the metadata is located. So that would be the biggest difference, is if we knew where the data is located in a specific area of the documents, that's when it would be best to use capture profiles.
Mm-hmm.
But if the metadata kind of varies in position, then we would recommend using smart fields.
Okay. In regarding like a QA process, can we review and correct extracted values before the document is filed?
Oh, absolutely,
Okay.
absolutely. So smart fields can do the front end legwork, but yes, absolutely. That data can be updated before it moves on along into the archival location.
Okay. That is all the questions I have for now. Just a reminder, type your questions into the question box and I will ask Terrence what they are. Do you have something else you want to show, Terrence?
I think that's good.
Okay.
We can probably move into forms.
Okay.
Right. So Laserfiche Forms gives us the ability to design business processes that allow users to collect information, right? And we can, after collecting that information, we can perform actions like approving or editing that submitted information. So what Laserfiche Forms offers us is an intuitive designer that lets you create forms to collect the data, and then a process designer that lets you control the flow of that information so that the right people and teams get the information that they need, right? So let's go over to our forms view inside of Laserfiche, right? And so forms can allow us to design forms that folks can submit. So I'm gonna go ahead and submit a form just to see what that looks like. And we'll select our one that I love the most is our vacation and sick leave request form. I can start that business process, right? And so we've designed this form to let us fill it out for whenever we're requesting future vacation time, or requesting future sick time, or logging previously taken sick time, right? And so all of these field variables and values that we're collecting in the form are going to be part of that business process, right? And so this request form is a simple form in that I can just type in my name, give it date, let's select today's date, and take some vacation time as a request. We can even upload files to support our request as well, right? And we can go and continue to fill out our form. We'll say starting tomorrow and come back next week. Right? And so we fill in the form and we submit it, and then off it goes. It's successfully been submitted. Now, what's also neat about forms is that it offers, very intelligent notifications, right? So that we can be more proactive than reactive, right? Because no one's really sitting around their forms inbox to wait for tasks to be assigned to them, right? And so we've got a couple different ways that you get notified. If you're in Laserfiche, you have the little bell at the top here that lets you know that, hey, someone has some vacation or sick leave requests for you to approve. And so if you're part of that process, you're going to get notified. You can jump right into that approval. But you also get an email notification to let you know that, hey, you've got something assigned to you. And so you can review the email and link you, and the email itself will link you directly to the task inside of Laserfiche Forms, right? And so it'll bring you directly to this location, right? And so since I'm a supervisor as part of this process, I could see through the summary when this was assigned to me, other information like the action history, right? So when the person submitted the form, right? At what date and what time, and where this approval is in the process. And if the supervisor here rejects they have the option to approve or reject. Let's say no more vacation time as a comment. You can hit reject, and that task will be bumped back to the submitter in this case, right? And so now, since I'm the same person here, I see that that task has been assigned to me for my review. So I'm the submitter, so I'm going to have the opportunity to go and review that submission. So let's go and take a look at the task. Right? If I look at the action history, I can see that the previous supervisor approval was rejected, and the comment was made that there's no more vacation time. So now I have the opportunity to change the request, right? So I can say, okay, maybe not next week, we'll go the week after. Right? You can add your own comments, or they can add their own comments. So and go ahead and submit. And it just
Terrence, I
keeps
just want to let
going
you
and
know we have a
following
bunch of
along.
questions. So
Oh,
whenever you're
sure,
ready
sure,
to take a pause.
sure, sure. Right. And so the supervisor can then approve or see the task assigned to them. They can see the action history, what changes were made in the comments, um, and then go ahead and approve the submission. Right. Now the business process has completed, and not only has it been completed, now if we go over to our repository, we also get a notification, right, to let us know that our leave has been approved. Okay. So now I can go over into the repository and take a look, and now we've got some leave request forms. In this case, it's a vacation time request for Terrence. You can see the actual form that was submitted. And also, as part of this document storage or document archival, we get a brief action history with all of our comments entered during the process or captured during the process. Okay. Kimberly, we have some questions.
Yes, sorry, I was unmuting. Okay, so some of these I just need a confirmation. Can we create email notifications for approvers? That's a yes, right?
Oh, yes, absolutely.
Yep. Okay. Can we have multiple approvers for forms, such as a new employee request for a form may have the department approval, HR, and then maybe IT?
Yes, so all of that flow of approval can be controlled in the process diagram, right, or process model. And so we can have approvals go all at once to those each entities and wait until all of them are completed, or we can go in a serial type of approval step process, right?
So just to confirm, there are workflows built out behind the forms. So I think what the question is sort of like, what is workflow and what is forms?
Right, so think of workflow as any interactions that may take place inside of the repository, whereas the forms flows of information is inside of forms and process automation there, or business process automation there.
Okay. Can you go into the zone position options for the capture profile? What does anchor text mean?
So anchor text is like if the zone is very tight, for example, let me pull up the capture profile view so that we can see visually what I'm talking about here. I'm going to come over to capture profile. There may be instances where your zones are really tight. For example, the address, right? So we've got data ahead of it and before it. What the anchoring text will allow you to do is create the zone or a zone that's bigger than your captured data. And using the anchor text, it'll allow you to use regular expressions to say the data that I want to capture needs to be parsed amongst way too much data. Right? So in this case, I can anchor some text and you can see that it's got way too much data that I need. And I can use pattern matching to tell it to start the data that I want to capture after the word address or after the semicolon, for example.
All right, do you want to take another question?
Here's my anchor text. Yes, I'm ready for another question.
Okay. As I understand, at the example of the job applications, the fields and values are imported through files. I may miss something at the example of Downtown College. Can you please explain how the field and values of ID and name are there for the selecting?
Oh, right. So the Downtown College example, if we look at how the template was created or how the template is configured, we see that it's actually using what's called dynamic fields, right? And so dynamic fields will link those fields to an external table. In this case, we've got an external table called students, where that students table will have data columns for the ID, date of birth, last name, and first name. And so that's how, using the external table, we're able to configure that anytime a student ID field, the ID is selected, it goes to that table to retrieve the date of birth, last name, and first name from that student's external table. And these lookup tables are created inside of the business or the process automation view. And we've got data management here, and we've got these lookup tables that we can bring in from other sources. And in this case, we've got a students table that we've created by importing all of the student information into the system.
Okay. Just another confirmation. Will the actual documents in like a single client's repository be used as training data for the AI?
I'm sorry, can you repeat that question, Kimberly?
Yeah, will the documents in our repository be used as training data for the AI?
I don't believe so.
No? Okay. If capture profiles can't read the document, we can just fill in the metadata, right? And that's a yes, right?
That's correct. That's correct. So we would probably eventually bake into the workflow that if the capture profile fails, you can have a condition that will route that document to a further QC process where you can update the metadata manually.
Okay. Okay, we are caught up on the questions. Wait. Going back to extracting values using smart fields, do you always have to click on extract values, or is there a way that that can be automated?
Right, so workflow can actually automate that. So there's no need to actually use the extract button inside of the view unless you wanted to re-extract data or reinitiate the extraction. But you can tell Laserfiche workflow or have the template be configured to have Laserfiche workflow perform that extraction as soon as the document enters the repository.
Okay. Okay, we've reached the end of the questions. Do you want to do the integration? Move on then?
Sure. So Laserfiche offers a few different methods to integrate, right, with other applications. And so really the integrations can allow you to connect to those external applications in a multitude of methods, right? This can allow you to create what are called remote agents that sit, on systems inside of your environment to do the data brokerage between Laserfiche and the other application. We can also use web service connections and even application connections, right? And so you can create application connections, and furthermore, you can even ask SmartChat to give you answers onto how to link other applications to Laserfiche, right? And it's going to go out and it's going to comb through the Laserfiche educational resources to give you, those step-by-step guides to integrate. Some examples of integrations that Laserfiche offers, right? They've got a DocuSign integration that will send documents from Laserfiche or allow you to initiate signature requests directly from Laserfiche. There are other web service connections that you can use to link data between an Azure database to an Azure SQL database to the Laserfiche cloud system, so that you can broker data between those two environments. Right?
We don't have any questions about this section. But I do have a question regarding naming conventions. There is a way to force users to name things correctly, yes?
Yes, that's a definite yes, and Laserfiche workflow will help with that, right? So with Laserfiche workflow, we can force it to utilize the metadata that we're capturing to facilitate that nomenclature of how we name the documents in the repository.
What's the fastest way to find every document for one case or one person?
That's a great question. I would say I would rely on metadata to do that, right? And so if you've got these documents entered into the repository using the appropriate metadata or having folks fill out the appropriate metadata, you can use a template search, right? To say, downtown college, find me everything for the students ID 15, for example.
Oh, that's a
And
good
so
idea.
go out
Yeah.
and find all of those
Yeah.
documents. Right. or if I were to look for all of my job applications for any folks that are trying to hire for account manager, I can go out and I can search for all of those documents all at once.
Okay, that's good. No further questions.
Excellent.
Just a reminder, those of you who have questions, please use the question box in the GoToMeeting interface.
Actually, Kimberly, I'm at the end of my topics that I wanted to discuss today.
Yes, you are. Okay. Just one more minute for questions. Okay, yeah, looks like we have answered them all. Well, thank you very much, Terrence. Excellent session. Really good. And lots of good questions.
Thank
So
you,
thank you to
everyone.
our audience. We walk through what is new in Laserfiche web client, how AI summarizes and smart chat helps you scan less and understand more, how workflow can file and name documents while completing key fields, when to use capture profiles or smart fields, and how approvals run in Laserfiche forms. If you want a deeper dive into your process, reply to the confirmation email we sent out and we will connect with you. Again, the recording of today's session will be shared with all registrants no later than Friday and honestly probably today. On behalf of our team, thank you for spending the hour with us. Have a great rest of your day and thank you again, Terrence.
Thanks, everyone.